Okay, good morning everybody. I hope you're all doing great. So now we'll move to the second part of today's presentation. Mainly I'll just continue what Rahma has already started talking about. That is, we're going to discover more learning styles. And this is the outline. First I'm going to talk about the ambiguity tolerance, ambiguity intolerance, then the reflectivity versus the impulsivity, the visual, auditory and kinesthetic styles, and finally the autonomy, awareness and action. Okay, so first, ambiguity tolerance, ambiguity intolerance. When you hear this title, what comes to your mind? When you hear the title, what do you think about?
Ambiguity tolerance?
Yeah.
So what do you think it means, ambiguity tolerance? Ambiguity tolerance, ambiguity intolerance.
I think ambiguity tolerance means that some people maybe like people tend to be tolerant to like some counter ideas or opinions that are different to theirs, or sometimes when they like they face some ambiguity or ambiguous ideas.
Yes, this is a part of it. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, now let's read what we have on the slide. This style concerns the degree to which people are cognitively willing to tolerate ideas and propositions that run counter to their own belief system or structure of knowledge. That is, the degree to which people tend to either accept or refuse something which is new, and mostly something which actually contradicts what they already have in mind or their background knowledge. Okay?
So that's why tolerance.
Yeah. Exactly. So now we will see each one. So for ambiguity tolerance, some people are relatively open-minded in accepting ideologies, events, and facts that contradict their own views. That is, if someone can tolerate ambiguity, mostly he has an open mind, he can accept new ideas without having any problem with them. On the other hand, we have the ambiguity intolerance. Some people are closed-minded and dogmatic. They tend to reject items that are contradictory or slightly incongruent with their existing system. These people tend to have a kind of psychological discomfort when they face something which is new. They just can't accept it. And I think we all have experienced this with something in our lives.
Yeah, so, yes,
I want to give you an example of
Yeah.
a teaching writing. So some teachers can accept only ideas that they think they are clear. And I think teachers should be more
Open-minded,
this is
yeah.
a very important point to mention, teaching.
Yeah.
Be more tolerant we're going to come to this.
We will see some studies. Yeah.
But now we just look at the meaning of these two types of characteristics of learners. Okay, we have people who are ambiguous tolerance and tolerance ambiguity into new things. But other one, and this is, if you look at what's going on in the world now, religion, experience, nothing's being done, it has to do with this. This is the main fact. It has nothing to do with the religion itself or the ideology itself, but it has to do with those people's personalities and characteristics, okay, in these terms. They are, of course, they are gay. The second type of
yeah.
people, ambiguity,
Intolerance.
They don't accept, they are closed-minded, dogmatic, and don't accept new things, etc.
This is important, for example, to the fact that some learners are patient. For example, they upload they accept a kind of ambiguity in the, for example, vocabulary.
Yes, that's it, exactly. Yeah. It has to do with patience.
Yes,
Are we going to see some examples?
Asking, for example, about every detail, what's the difference between this and this and so on. So they want to, they tend to have that real and to know everything from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're going to see it. Okay, so now we'll see some advantages and disadvantages of ambiguity tolerance. You might find it weird that actually ambiguity tolerance has some disadvantages because you think that it's 100% a good, positive thing, but in fact it does have some disadvantages. So the advantages, a person who is tolerant of ambiguity is free to entertain a number of innovative and creative possibilities and not be cognitively or affectively distributed by the ambiguity and uncertainty. That is, they don't get troubled either on the affective domain or the cognitive domain. In second language learning, and now we'll come to what you talked about, Aziz. In second language learning, a great amount of apparently contradictory information is encountered. Words that differ from the native language, exceptions when it comes to rules, the culture, and the whole system. Of course, when a learner wants to learn a new language, it's dealing with a total ambiguous thing, rather on the linguistic domain, the writing system, the cultural ideas that come with the new language. So they have to be really patient, as you said. Is it clear at this point?
Yes.
Okay. So successful language learning necessitates tolerance of such ambiguities, at least for interim periods or stages, during which ambiguous items are given a chance to become resolved. So students have to be patient and give themselves time to actually deal with those ambiguous things that they have in the new language and accept them, maybe try to make them fit in their existing schematas.
So that's why this is very relevant to learning new language, because when you are learning language, it's something new.
Yeah.
So, and this idea of ambiguity tolerance, is very relevant to this case. Okay, already you have ideas, language, rules, etc. And you have to take into account this and to go slowly and smoothly with the students. So successful language learning states tolerance. As a teacher, you have to be tolerant of such ambiguities, at least for interim periods or stages in which ambiguous terms
The
are
first periods of
given.
learning.
The first time you introduce new things, you have to be this is a
Tolerant.
very important point. It's a very crucial point in the teaching learning processes. What happens in reality is completely the opposite of what we are talking about in here. Teachers usually are mechanical, quick, because of the obligation to just go into the the inspectors come in, and then on the later. So they go into the teaching and learning so quickly, they avoid taking into account these kinds of issues related to ambiguity tolerance and intolerance. So for you, and this is yes, approach is a result of the context, okay, the result of the situation you are going on. So that's why you as a teacher, you have to be extremely patient, you have to be tolerant, especially when you introduce these new items, okay, new rules, new vocabulary, ideas, etc. And then take some time to drill that, and to teach that, and to practice that, and then you can move on to other things, okay? So, yes?
Yeah, just an example from when I was a student in high school. There was a classmate. He used like to show kind of resistance to the visual. For example, he used to, just for example, even things. She was like kind of intolerant of certain ambiguities. And I can give you 2 examples. Like teacher was like it was a pretty perfect lesson, and then there was an example like this is a very delicious meal that I have ever eaten. And then like she used like to compare the sentence with like Moroccan or something like this, and she said, why did you use ever? I guess we should use never.
Who is speaking here?
The student, not like
So apply the rules.
yeah. She may like kind of talk like comparison between the
Yes.
and like if like it's said that we have like we should like say like I have never here. Like wow.
And also, here you have 2 things. Here you have the idea of using the first language as a model and applying this is one thing. And then in English, normally never we use this in negative form. We don't use ever in negative form. The rule for the students who are beginning first stages of learning English, they take never as for negative form. So that's why when the teacher is using ever, so you have 2 things.
And this
Two contradictory things for the student.
yeah, and it's just ask what was another example was with the
And the teacher was taking into account.
I was like-
drawing.
well, she said this line, so this is how it is said.
Was explained.
Yeah, so this is how it is.
So that's how you have to deal with the, you have to be patient and to explain it. Take time to explain, to drill, to practice.
No, what he said, this is how you should learn. The other example was with smell. For example, it smells fish. And then she couldn't get it. How come something smells like?
So because you know the smell just to do the action.
Yeah.
And then the teacher has to also explain this in terms of how do we explain the idea of smell. Stated meaning of action. Remember?
He didn't do that.
Yes, we do that. That's how to apply these rules or these principles of taking into account tolerance, ambiguity tolerance, and tolerance. The teacher should be pragmatic and to explain, like using this idea of saying that the verb smell can have two types of meanings. And first meaning is action meaning, give examples, and then spend some time for the students to give examples, maybe or to do an activity on that, and then go on to explain the next meaning, which is stated meaning. It smells good, it smells nice, and then give them examples and practice on that, and then move.
No, this is okay.
That doesn't happen.
And she wasn't satisfied with
The students should
the
students, of course, yeah. Especially if the teacher is doing that all the time. We can understand that the teacher does that from time to time, human beings. This is a problem. So, but if the teacher is doing that all the time, not taking into account this idea of ambiguity, tolerance, and intolerance, just go on with the current along without explaining, without spending time, without being patient, that's a real issue for the teacher. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, Bruce?
I think that here, ambiguity, tolerance, and the intolerance have also to do with the cultural issues,
Yeah.
especially for something which we take for granted here in Morocco as Muslims and as Arabs or Ahmadiyya Muslims, and which is completely different in the target language, which is completely of another culture and context. And here the teacher should just pay attention to just make students aware that not whatever they read or they encounter can be applied in our situation. This is it.
That's it. And that's what you have in the second bullet is that what do you have? In second language learning, the reason of apparently contradictory information is encountered. Where do we have this apparently contradictory information? Words that differ from the native language. The words. Exceptions when it comes to rules. And then when it comes to a whole cultural system that is different or distant from that of the native culture. So these are really serious issues for the language learning. So if you have all this and you don't really pay attention to being sensitive to this issue of ambiguity, tolerance, and intolerance, so you are doing more damage than you are constructing and building and teaching. Okay?
Just an example, it's a little bit fun at the same time. So just a teacher teaching students the irregular groups. Then she asked the student to write a list in which there is a cat and food. The student said, actually said, because by French, he said, good. So no, cat. Then it's a cat. Then he said, but said put. They said, yeah, so that's only cute, she said. Cat, then he said, okay, I'm going to the room. So no,
So, yeah, so here we're talking about the other item related to exceptions when it comes to rules.
again, general one.
Yeah,
I just said
that's another issue. So this focus on the idea that we have exceptions for rules, different rules, etc. So it's a really vast field for this idea of ambiguity, tolerance, and intolerance. So you have to take into account that and be patient with that. Give it time to spend time on explaining these things for the students. So, okay?
I have a small joke here.
Yes.
There is a small joke. It's a classroom where we have a teacher of French. And then the inspector comes to class and he tells the students, debout. Everything gets up, stands up, and there is one girl who is not standing up, and he tells her, "Do we?"
Okay, thank you very much for this.
Okay, so as our professor has explained, teachers need to be really patient and help their students face ambiguities, especially during the first stages of the learning. So now we'll move to the disadvantages. Too much tolerance of ambiguity can have a damaging effect. People can become wishy-washy, accepting virtually every proposition before them, not efficiently subsume necessary facts into their cognitive organizational structure. Okay, so such a... Sorry? Okay, it's like they just take everything for granted. Yeah, they don't analyze or use their critical thinking to see what's really right, what's wrong. Yes, Ibrahim?
Yes, that's it. That's the idea.
Okay, thank you. So such a excess tolerance has the effect of hampering or preventing meaningful subsumption of ideas. This is kind of, it explains the wishy-washy thing. Linguistic rules, for example, might not be effectively integrated into a whole system. Rather, they may be gulped down in meaningless chunks learned by rote. It's like we move to rote memorization. Okay?
So the fact that the students, this is liberation to the students.
Yeah, too much tolerance.
Who are just trying to accept things like
Everything,
that. Too much tolerance. Okay? So it doesn't serve the learning process because it takes just that way.
For granted, yeah.
By memorization, by routes, etc. Without understanding, because learning is understanding, the rationale behind what you are learning. If you have that, okay, I remember my case, for example, I always keep talking about this. When I was learning X, Y, mathematics, Z, and those equations and so on, okay. The teacher was just talking about that, you know, and never explaining the rationale for that. I started hating mathematics because of that reason.
Yeah, this is because a human mind is a meaning maker.
Yeah, meaning maker. Because meaningless instead of yes.
Yeah, it's something teachers should take one way to the students means accept. And accept it. The element is try to make sense of it.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's like irrelevant. Sometimes it takes like this.
So here comes the fact that here we are talking about one category of learners who are too tolerant. Okay? They're happy with that.
Yeah.
Okay? So be careful as a teacher with these kind of students.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay, you have to, yeah, that's good. You accept it, that's good. But you need to understand why.
Explain, yeah.
To make, instead of making meaningless chunks learned by rote, you need as a teacher to make them learn meaningful chunks learned by rote, by justification, by explanation, by practice, by drill, by patience, etc.
Yes. So you should not let, just because you tolerate ambiguity, don't let it ban you from actually questioning things that you doubt. You have to use your critical thinking.
You have to make a balance.
Yeah.
Okay?
And now we'll move to the advantages of the ambiguity intolerance. It might seem like weird, because again we think that intolerance is something which is bad and negative, but it has some advantages. A certain intolerance at an optimal level enables one to close off avenues of hopeless possibilities, to reject entirely contradictory material, and to deal with the reality of the system that one has built. Okay, I think this is clear. It's almost the opposite of what I have just explained. And the disadvantages. Here we have, if ambiguity is perceived as a threat, the result is a rigid, dogmatic.
So we have to begin the slide again, so we one by one.
Okay, so we'll go through them one by one. So if ambiguity...
Some people can go easily with that, but maybe you have to...
Learning styles.
Yes.
Okay.
Go one by one.
Okay, so if ambiguity is perceived as a threat, The result is a rigid, dogmatic, brittle mind that is too narrow to be creative. This may be particularly harmful in second language learning. It just bans people from using their imagination and their creativity, okay? When they are, of course, they do not tolerate ambiguity.
So this is what we have been talking about, okay?
Yeah.
Not accepting and do hard learning. Okay?
So here we will move to a study. A few research findings are available on ambiguity intolerance in second language learning. So people were actually studying this phenomena and trying to investigate it and its effect in learning. Okay. So Neyman et al. 1978 found that ambiguity tolerance was one of only 2 significant factors in predicting the success of their high school learners of French in Toronto. So here we have 2 factors, and ambiguity tolerance was actually of great importance. So even if we see that we have 2, so it's like the percentage of the importance of the ambiguity tolerance.
So this is very useful because here we're talking about this issue in terms of success and failure.
Failure,
You
yeah.
see how important that is. So here we have one research which says that ambiguity tolerance was one. Okay, there are others, one of the other factors who play a role in the success and predict the success of the learners of French.
Yeah. So Chappell and Roberts, 1986, measured tolerance of ambiguity in learners of English as a second language in Illinois. They found that learners with a high tolerance of ambiguity were slightly more successful in certain language tasks. So here again we relate between ambiguity tolerance and being successful in learning the language.
And which means that if you have this being ambiguity tolerance can help in the success, it means the other way around as well. It means that when students or learners are tolerant to ambiguity,
it hampers their
it helps lead them to failure.
Yeah.
Okay? Even because here we are talking about disadvantages of intolerance. But now you are bringing some research in relation to tolerance.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that it means that you have to understand and take the other side, the implicit side of the research.
Yeah.
Yes?
So these findings suggest that ambiguity tolerance may be an important factor in second language learning, and in fact it is a very important factor. So now we'll move to the second style, which is reflectivity and impulsivity, and Rahma has already mentioned this and introduced it to you.
I'm a little bit curious about the word ambiguity. Is internal the word instead of ambiguity? I think in the word ambiguity, it's not that you get the sense that teachers are doing such, but because ambiguous, it's something in the beginning, like marking. So it automatically will create you students will accept it. Just from the word ambiguity. Is there another word?
This is the word used by Brown in his research, in his book.
Just as an example, when teachers teach us example vocabulary, we can take for example all the meaning of the second as always to allow some ambiguity. So you can't give a detail from the very beginning. So some ambiguity always is there. The same with grammatical structures, for example, teaching, for example, English like 3 and 2. You cannot give every detail for students at the high school. When they get to the university, they learn a lot of things about the use of those structures. Okay, so you cannot, as a teacher, give everything from the beginning. So ambiguity it depends on the level of the students.
You are talking about the types of ambiguity, and so on. And the Ahmed is just talking about
The term used.
He doesn't like the word ambiguity.
Students are usually studying with ambiguity. Students are means have the right not to accept something ambiguous. It looks as if
But
means I'm not bothering agents.
Yeah, look, but choice of yes, that's the most important thing, okay? You can use whatever word you want, okay? Here we are referring to the literature, and in the literature we talk about this in terms of ambiguity tolerance, ambiguity intolerance, okay? You know, in the literature, when they do the research terminology, you can have different people use different terminology, okay? But let's just take this. Let's not go to the details of style and choice of diction and so on, because here, again, sometimes it depends on the people's tastes and so on. Okay, this is very sensitive part of writing and you know, choice of words and diction. Sometimes you have people who prefer one word, another prefer another. Okay, but what we have to take into account here is the fact that what we are introducing to learners when we are teaching the language is something unclear, ambiguous, new.
New, yeah.
Take all these kinds of variables, characteristics of this field, okay? And then students, you can have students who are tolerant to that ambiguity, students who are intolerant, okay? Okay, so first, yeah, you don't have to recall.
To use, yeah.
Only one conversion event in the afternoon or how to be conducted.
Yeah.
Yes?
Okay, so Mr. Akhras just tried to tolerate the term that we have, ambiguity. Okay, thank you.
What is it?
I said that he has to tolerate the term that we have. It's used by Brown. If it's ambiguous for you, just try to accept it. Of course. Okay.
Good.
So, yeah, we will move to the second type, to learning style, which is reflectivity versus impulsivity, and Rahma has introduced this type. It is common for people to show in their personalities certain tendencies towards reflectivity sometimes and impulsivity at other times. Again, here it has to do with personality. Some people, when they are faced with, for example, a question, they tend to take much time to think about it, then give an answer. Here, they are reflective people, okay? On the other hand, we have some people, for example, Naima, I guess, you are impulsive. Once she hears a question, she'll give the answer right away, okay? So it has to do with intuition, kind of. So psychological, sorry?
You keep going.
Okay, so psychological studies have been conducted to determine the degree to which in the cognitive domain a person tends to make either a quick or gambling impulsive guess at an answer Okay, something is missing here. Yeah, to a problem, okay. Or a slower, more calculated, reflective decision. I guess this is clear and we all do it. For example, when reading a text, some students go through the text really quickly and they make quicker guesses, which takes us back to the reading as a guessing game thing that we have seen. Yeah. And some students, they need much time and they try to think about everything that's in front of them.
And they need much more confused.
And then and then here what we're talking about is that there was research, psychological studies that have been conducted to investigate these two types of
learning
analysis.
styles. Yeah.
Okay, they have conducted to determine the degree to which a person tends to make either a quick gambling impulsive guess for answering or solving a problem, or a slower, more calculated, reflective decision, because we have people who have different tendencies in this regard. Okay? Now, go on to the results.
Okay, so David Ewing, 1977, refers to the two styles that are closely related to the reflectivity impulsivity. That is, we have the systematic styles, which goes hand in hand with the reflective style. Systematic thinkers tend to weigh all the consideration in a problem. They work out all the loopholes, and then after extensive reflection, venture a solution. So they have to think, reflect about everything, then they'll have a solution to whatever they are dealing with.
According to your point, to your opinion, where does it belong, this systematic style? Reflectivity or impulsivity?
Reflectivity, yeah, it has to do with the using the logic, I guess.
I'm just trying to show the connection.
Yeah. On the other hand, we have the intuitive style. It goes with, of course, the impulsive. An intuitive thinker makes a number of different gambles on the basis of hunches, with possibly several successive gambles before a solution is achieved. So they tend to take time because they have to make different guesses, then select one to give the answer. Here we have a study about the reflective impulsive learning style. Dora, 1973, found that among her sample of adult learners of ESL in the USA, reflective students were slower but more accurate than impulsive students in reading, just as the example that I gave. In another study of adult ESL students, Abraham, 1981, concluded that reflection was weakly related to performance on a proofreading task. So here again, we have a contradiction between the two studies. Jameson, 1992, who conducted a study on adult ESL learners, found that fast, accurate learners, or good guessers, were better language learners as measured by the standardized test of English as a foreign language, TOEFL. However, Jameson warned against assuming that impulsivity always implies accuracy. Some of her subjects were fast and inaccurate. Okay? So it's not always the case when someone takes time to read. It doesn't mean he'll be 100% accurate in his reading.
There is some degree of research that justifies the for the other, but it's still not yet decided.
Yeah.
There's still some relativity there. But we have to take into account the fact that these two types of learners exist, and we have to be cautious about them.
Okay, so these scholars have different results, so we can't judge which is better yet.
They are not decided, so look at the first one. So concluded that reflection was weakly related to the performance. Okay?
It's like the second refutes the
The other
first.
one, it refutes reflection. The result. Good guessers were better than good learners. So here it shows that the other, which is guessing and gambling, is a kind of way to be successful, but still it's not decided. Okay? That's why now at the end, not before, now, that impulsivity, Johnson warned against assuming that impulsivity always implies
accuracy. It does not. Okay, so the reflective impulsive has some important considerations for classroom second language learning and teaching. Here we have the implication in the learning and teaching. Teachers tend to judge mistakes too harshly, especially in the case of a learner with an impulsive style who may be more willing than a reflective person to gamble at an answer. So here we have teachers have to take into consideration their students' learning styles. On the other hand, a reflective person may require patience from the teacher, who must allow more time for the student to struggle with the responses. For example, I think I'm more of an impulsive learner. In high school or middle school, when teachers give an answer while I'm like thinking about the question and the possible answers, once I select one answer, I find out that students already moved, everybody moved to the second question, and it's like really frustrating. Kind of impulsive, like sometimes it's
reflective, not impulsive.
reflective. I want to say, yeah, sorry, yeah, quick, yeah, reflective.
A bit always works.
Yeah, I'm reflective. Okay, so yeah, yeah. So I think I am. On the other hand, a reflective person may require patience from the teacher, who must allow more time for the students to struggle with the responses. It is also conceivable that those with impulsive styles may go through a number of rapid transitions of semi-grammatical stages of second language acquisition. Reflective persons tend to remain longer at a particular stage with larger leaps from stage to stage. So these people take much more time to move from one stage to the second, and teachers need to take this into consideration when they are dealing with this type of students.
Good. Now, before we go on, we have to spend some time.
Okay.
So, first one. So, somebody can read the first. Yes, please.
Teachers tend to judge mistakes too harshly, especially in the case of the learner with an impulsive style, may be more willing than a reflective person to gamble.
Yeah. So, what do you understand from this? So, what do the teachers do normally do? So, they make judgments too harshly, too quickly. Okay.
Well, teachers intolerant to students' mistake, because like some students are spontaneous, reading tasks, so they should not be too harsh. When writing the mistake.
So, because when they are too harsh, what are they doing? They are evaluating just the answer. Okay? Instead of taking the whole picture, they have themselves one part of the okay? So instead of taking the whole picture, they just focus on the fact that they are teaching an language. So he says the correct answer, yes, that's good. No, that's not good. So harsh. Okay? But here, what should be done?
For example, for the other students who are reflective.
Yes. This is one thing. They have to give time to more reflective students to answer. And then if they have an answer too quickly, and maybe not students, yes.
If students' reaction is impulsive, the teacher's reaction to that shouldn't be impulsive.
So it should be
judgmental.
This student is a kind of impulsive style. Okay. You have to be encouraging,
Tolerate.
positive.
Yeah.
You have to be positive. Any other answer? So that's another way of doing that. Yes?
I think that this is correct. The teacher had just to give some time to the students. However, there are some exercises which lead themselves to tell no. It's the opposite. To be impulsive. So either the student knows it or he does not know it. Why? It's simply because there is no rule for it, like irregular verbs, like idioms, like collocations, and so on. This is something which is impossible. If you reflect on it, you are not going to find any answer. However, some time should be given to the students to think of it a little bit.
I think even if it is very, very easy, it needs time. You need time to and the agents with all the regular letters, and the combination of associations, sometimes you should be given some regular associations.
The reminds me of the notion of the guiding line, that's one of the students who are impulsive, there are students who need time to think about the answer. So there must be always this waiting time, and students should be adjusting to that.
And the teacher shouldn't be afraid of this waiting time.
Yeah.
Sometimes, usually teachers are afraid. Silence? No, silence, let's go. So they don't give enough time to this waiting time notion. Okay? Especially for young or new teachers, novice teachers. Okay?
Yes, this chapter has noticed that this learner from the beginning, where they started asking questions like this, and they noticed that some of us are involved in answering, but others are hesitant, something like that. So he advised us to wait for a certain time, to give time to give a chance for people to
Yes, so that's the management for these two types of strategies. Okay?
I think it's not always the case of speaking, it can be also writing. The example that comes to my mind is that I have a friend, she is very brilliant, she is hardworking, but when it comes to the exam, the time is not enough for her. So she knows all the answers, but she needs time. So this can be.
Yeah. So that's one thing. Yeah, two homework. So that's the idea here. So teachers should
Recognize their
students for their students. Okay, they should give time. Okay. The next point is on the other hand, a reflective person may acquire patience from the teacher. This is the opposite of the first one. Okay. Yeah. So for these reflective students, learners, we need to give them time to apply this notion of waiting time. It is also conceivable that those with impulsive styles may go through a number of rapid transitions and grammatical stages of SLA. These kind of students, there will be also some transitions. Okay? But here comes the role of the teacher. Should explain, okay? Drill, practice, and right after this, there will be transition of all types of things in relation to rules, especially for rules. Reflective persons tend to remain longer at a particular stage. You can read from a stage, then this is the, okay, concerning your case, mentioned this case of students. So the teacher should keep up. But still, when it comes to exams, good. When it comes to exams,
That's another story.
So our time is time.
Yeah.
But the work should be done before the exam. Also, you have to train the students that you take too much time than you should. You have to regulate. Another role that the teacher can play, be a regulator. Okay, a regulator.
I think the issue here is the amount of personal
Has to do with many of the things we are seeing here have to do with management, but also in relation to other things like logic.
The teacher cannot be in a situation of impulsive or particular students by teaching or printing reading.
Yeah. And also it has to do with not to focus only on classroom management. Also related to techniques of teaching, to materials, okay, or you are teaching visuals or whatever, exercises for action, biological calculations, or just okay, so it has to do with the material as well. Now we go on.
Okay, so we'll move to the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic styles, and I'm sure we are all familiar with these from the multiple intelligences approach. So learners show preferences toward either visual, auditory, or kinesthetic input. Okay, so here we'll just see some characteristics of the visual learners tend to prefer reading and studying charts, drawing, and other graphic information. They tend to look at the teacher's face intently. They like looking at wall displays, for example, the PowerPoint, books, etc. They bring their books and actually look at the text. They often recognize words by sight. They use lists to recognize their thoughts, and this is like the same techniques that they use when trying to prepare for their exams. Okay? So the second is that they recall information by remembering how it was set out on the page. So they focus on the setting of the information on the page. Anything which is related to the vision and yeah. So now the second is the auditory learners prefer listening to lectures and audio tapes. They like the teacher to provide verbal instructions. They like dialogues, discussions, and plays. For example, such students like to get involved in activities that involve discussions and role plays, acting, and such stuff. They solve problems by talking about them, discussions, as what we have just done a while ago. And they use rhythm and sound as memory aids. Okay?
So you use more sound with
Okay, so
sounds are very useful for this.
yeah, like what Mr. I don't remember his name, who came.
Jason Arnold.
Yeah.
Just like I remember in the non-degree, when a student came to memorize, for example, the poetry. Sorry. Okay, for example. Yeah, one of the teachers thought of an idea is to teach those poems via headline. Even those ladies poems via
So he was using the poems by this person?
Arabic poems, but in the written.
Okay, so we move to the kinesthetic. Kinesthetic learners show a preference for demonstrations and physical activity involving bodily movement. They learn best when they are involved or active. They find it difficult to sit still for long periods of time, and they use movement as a memory aid. Some of us, like when they want to memorize something, they hold the book and keep on moving. I'm sure some of you did this before.
Can you raise your hands? Who likes to move to remember, when remembering, memorizing? Yeah.
Okay.
No. Here we are talking about this, like doing this, and then you keep walking,
Yeah.
moving. But you don't have English in class.
Okay.
Personally, I don't. I like to be still.
There are people who like sitting and they move forward and backward. Like people who read cheap by heart.
But that's a kind of tradition. It doesn't have to do with it. It's a tradition. Everybody, even if it's not a person, just tends to do that for memorization. Okay?
Yeah.
Good. Please, if you don't mind, can we share together? We want to make this like this.
This is a very famous strategy used in Quranic school.
Yeah, they move.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Here's the tradition.
Yeah.
It has to do with the tradition that has been going on in there for a long time.
And if you put the next question, they use it like
They keep the in the memory. Yeah. It's a habit built in. Okay, good. Yes?
So we continue. So most successful learners utilize both visual and auditory input, but slight preferences to one or another may distinguish one learner from another. So we all have most of these mixed up in us, but we tend to, the dominance again, which one is dominant. So here is a study and results. Joe Reid, 1987, who conducted a study of adult learners of ASL, found a number of significant cross-cultural differences in visual and auditory styles. By means of a self-reporting questionnaire, the subjects rated their own preferences. The students rated statements like, when I read instructions, I learn them better, and I learn more when I make drawings as I study, on a 5-point scale ranging from strongly agree to strongly disagree. So we'll check the results.
It's okay, continue.
Okay, so that's just a study that tries to investigate what kind of style that students tend to use the most, and yeah, using questionnaires. So students would, yeah. Yeah, here. Okay, so students try to answer questions about how do they feel more comfortable when they are studying, okay? So some say that when I read instructions, I learn them better, so they tend to prefer reading. On the other hand, others try to make drawings on the
This is a
paper.
very, excuse me, this you are reminding me of something that I'm going to do very soon. Also for you, the research axis that you can think of from now on. You can see inshallah. I'm going to focus on you in the book. Okay? But in this class, there are a number of things when you are reading the book. You suggest a number of issues for investigation. And you can do something like this, okay? You try to see the validity of the impact of these types of learning styles on students' proficiency or achievements in English. So, how are you going to proceed with that as an example? If you want to do something like this, you want to investigate something like this, the validity of the impact of these types of learning styles on, I'm not going to focus on all, because that's the PhD, so to go beyond the limit, but you can just focus on some learning styles and their impact, if there is any impact, on the students' proficiency in learning English. And how are you going to do that? As an example, to show you concretely. You are going to do two things. First is proficiency test. You have to build a proficiency test. And what is proficiency? It's a kind of exam test in which you include exercises for different types of skills. Okay? There are a number of exercises you can take, and then you make your test. And then the next, you conduct the test for the students, you administer the test for the students, and then you get your results. Your analyze is okay, how many got good. We are going to classify that, for example, into 3 types, like bad achievers, middle achievers, best or good achievers. Okay, this is one way of classifying things. Then you go into the next component of the research, whereby you conduct or you administer a questionnaire for the students, like this one. By means of a self-reporting questionnaire, the subjects rated their own. So what are you going to do in the questionnaire? You include things like this. And then the students, they are going to choose yes or no, or how much. You can do it in terms of yes or no, or you can do it in terms of scale. Yes, a little bit, not at all, scale. And then you give them like this. When I read instructions, I learn them better. And I learn more when I make drawings and I study. This is the first one is a statement. And then you make yes or no. Or you make scale. The second one, I learn more when I make drawings and I study. Yes or no. Or you can make a scale. A little bit applicable. Not at all applicable. Very much applicable. 5-point scale or something like that. And then you analyze that. Okay, you come up with a questionnaire, and then you get your questionnaires back from the students, and then you analyze the questionnaire. And then you go on into the last component of the thing, which is to make the correlation. What we call the correlations between the types of achievers you have, and here you need to do some research. This is a lot of work. But that's an example of how a good piece of research looks like. You come up with your results, yes, and that's how you have those investigations we have seen before.
Yeah.
Those people who investigated like ambiguity kind of thing, and the source was meaningful or not meaningful, relevant or not valid, things like that. So they do things like this, and then they come up with results. And then you will say your results. Okay? And here there is one thing that we are working hard on trying to do that for you, because how you're going to do this kind of correlation is by means of a software called SPSS.
Yes. So I'm
Statistical
going
pattern.
to study next year.
We're working hard because we're working hard, but you should have it. That's
Yes.
our determination. You should have something like a training or a seminar on how to use that software. Okay? So you need to use it as well. Okay? We're going to help you with that. We will do our best to do it. Okay? Because the problem for this is that the experts are missing here. I learned it in abroad. I didn't learn it here in Morocco. Okay? But you know.
More scientific teachers.
It's like Excel, by the way. Statistics don't make it that big. Not to make it that really something impossible.
It just
Okay,
simplifies
like
the
Excel. You know, Excel, you can do calculations, you can make like percentages and things like that. But this one is more scientific for research. More for research. Okay? So this is just to draw your attention to do this, okay? So yes,
Okay. So here are the results of the study.
yes? SPSS.
No, this study.
The validity
And the impact.
the validity of the impact of learning styles on students' achievements in learning English. Okay, that is enough.
Okay, so now we'll move to the results of the study. So Korean students were significantly more visually oriented than native English speaking Americans. Japanese students were the least auditory students, significantly less auditory inclined than Chinese and Arabic students. And some of the preferences of the subjects were factors of gender, length of time in the US, academic field of study, and the level of education. So here we can see that there is actually more into the preferences toward one style or another than just the culture aspect or the previous learning experiences. It also has to do with the gender, length of time in some countries, I guess.
Yeah, there are a number of variables there for the.
Yeah. And of course the academic field or the material that they are dealing with. Such findings underscore the importance of recognizing learners' varying styles, preferences, but also of not assuming that they are easily predicted by cultural, linguistic background. Okay, so here we can just judge because someone is from this country, he's 100% an auditory learner, okay? Now we'll move
That is to say, according to this research, that they found out that these learning styles are not the only variables that determine the learning outcomes of the students. There are other variables that play also a role related to gender, culture, educational background, socioeconomic status, etc.
Yeah. Okay, so here we have the autonomy, awareness, and action. These are the 3 A's of learner development which have taken on significance in recent years, especially with increasing pedagogical emphasis on learner-centered language teaching within 2002.
Emphasis.
Emphasis.
And then the verb is to emphasize.
All right, emphasis. Sorry. So the first component that we have here is autonomy. Allowing learners to do things like initiate oral production, solve problems in small groups, practice language forms in pairs, and practice using the language outside the classroom. So here it's just letting it up to the students to do most of their learning, to be autonomous. Okay, is it clear?
So, allowing autonomy, allowing learners to do things by themselves, like initiate oral production, because many teachers you don't allow this for especially the children. They just put okay? So allow, initiate oral production. Don't be afraid as a teacher, because usually this has to do with classroom management as well. When you, and especially you have crowded classes, what happens is teachers, when they let the freedom to do that, there is chaos in the class, which is not good. Okay, so, but you have to be diplomatic, not to hurt. Okay, this aspect as well. Solve problems in small groups. practice learning cognitive pairs and practice using the language outside the classroom. So this is what I mean by autonomy.
Yeah. So the second component, or we'll first see some characteristics of autonomous learners. Who would like to read for us? Yes, Yunus.
Autonomous learners have insight into their learning styles and strategies. They take-
So here they are aware of their learning style, and what we have done like a while ago is good because some of us discovered that they actually have the right hemisphere thing. Okay? Yeah. And the strategies which we are going to see with Omar and Naima in a while. Yes, Yunus?
They take an active approach to learning tasks at hand.
Yeah.
They are willing to take risk to communicate in the target language at all costs.
So they're not like afraid from using the target language or from making mistakes while they are learning and speaking.
They are good guessers.
They tend to make more correct guesses. Yeah.
They attend to form as well as to content, that is, place important on accuracy as well as fluency.
So here the focus is on accuracy as well as fluency. Okay.
Develop the target language into a separate parent system and are willing to revise and reject hypotheses and rules that do not apply.
So here it reminds us of the ambiguity tolerance, ambiguity intolerance. They do not just take everything for granted, they analyze and they try to see things logically and how they make sense to them. Okay?
They have a tolerant and outgoing approach to the target language.
Again, they are tolerant.
So all these are characteristics.
Yeah. Okay, so the literature on autonomy raises some cautious flags. So Schmenk, 2005, described the non-universality of the concept of autonomy. Here, it's like when you go from one country to the other, not all people tend to accept autonomy. Some, for example, in Japan, I guess, it's like they need the teacher to provide something, to actually do something, or it would be more accurate if I say in South Africa, I guess, more than Japan. Okay.
And also in the Arab world, especially
Yeah, in Morocco.
at times, this is not applicable.
Yeah, acceptable.
Because, generally speaking, it's the teacher who is the
Source of
knowledge.
knowledge.
The source knowledge, and the other person pass it. In the past.
And I think it's still the same in some countries in South Africa and some Arab countries.
Yeah.
So it's the same idea with Sunaya 2002. She or he questioned the global validity of the so-called autonomous method of language meaning, which had obvious origins in European and North American traditions of individualism. So in Europe and America, it's 100% autonomous learning, whereas in the Arab world and some countries, this is actually problematic. Okay, so...
I think that, again, this is a result why this exists in Europe and not the Arab world. It's simply because of the result of what is the so-called Industrial Revolution, which started in the 19th century, and also a result of the two world wars, the last of which ended in 1945. And after that, there was this humanistic approach to everything, not only to teaching, to psychology, to everything, and teaching is just one part of this. And individualism, of course, is again one part of all this historical development.
Literature, yes. Everything is related. It's a parcours, okay? That has affected, historically speaking, all aspects or all disciplines. Okay? So it was applicable to these European countries, but these two, they go together, okay?
Yeah.
The Schmenk and the Sunaya, they go together. They are talking about the fact that they
autonomy
are
is not
universal, not common to all cultures. Because this, and here comes the role of some of the investigations that mention that this also has to do with other variables related to gender, culture, etc.
Yeah. So teachers need to be sensitive to the cultural background of students as they involve them in autonomous learning. Especially, for example, if you have a student from another country, you have to take into consideration his cultural background and whether he's used to be in an autonomous learning atmosphere or not.
Yeah, and also if you are related to when you are going to teach Allah, if you're teaching the urban area, or if you are going to teach in the rural area, if you are going to teach in the, for example, in the Amazigh area or Arab area. So you have to be careful, sensitive to these issues, okay? In the application of this respect for the learner or what is the noun for autonomous? Autonomy of the students, okay? So you have to be flexible. Flexibility is the key point in all this.
Yeah, for both the student and the teacher. Yeah. So the second point is awareness, providing opportunities for learners to become aware of what language learning is all about and what they can do to become better learners. Here, this has to do with the metacognitive aspects that we're going again to see in the coming parts of the presentation. Today, there are several studies on awareness and consciousness raising. Language programs are offering more occasions for learners to develop a metacognitive awareness of their ongoing learning. That is, they try to evaluate their own learning strategies and styles. And here are some studies. Simard and Wong, 2004, described an awareness of language program in the United Kingdom which helped students to engage in metalinguistic reflection. Nakatani, 2005, trained English learners in Japan to focus explicitly on oral production strategies, which resulted in improved performance in speaking. Rosa and Leo, 2000, found that learners of Spanish as a second language in the United States showed improved performance under conditions of awareness raising. These studies show that learners can indeed benefit from raised awareness of their own processes of learning. Yeah, so now the most important part, which is action and what we're going to do with all these principles that we have seen. Once learners can become aware of their predispositions, their styles, and their strengths and weaknesses, they can take appropriate action in the form of a plethora of strategies that are available to them. And that's it. Thank you.
That's what I want to see with the next presentation and yours as well, right?